We are at the end of tomato season and I am really close to my first frost. So I'm going to have to start cleaning the tomatoes off. I've already canned 24 quarts of tomato sauce, which is a lot for just my husband and I. Today I'm going to go through how I make oven-dried tomatoes, aka sun-dried tomatoes. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned and we'll go through that right now. First thing I'm going to do is wash and slice these tomatoes. And I have halved them. They look beautiful. They're nice and ripe. And I have sprinkled them with some kosher. I have sprinkled them with some coarse kosher salt, and they're ready to go in the oven. We have the oven temperature set at 225, and they'll probably be about 5 to 6 hours, and they will be ready for the next step. They're absolutely beautiful. So once you take your dehydrated tomatoes out of the oven, which I've done here, you want to measure and see how many cups you have. I package my sun-dried tomatoes in 1 cup containers or half pint. This plate holds 6 cups of oven-dried tomatoes, and I have put 6 half-pint jars in my dishwasher to get them sterilized. Even though we just spent 8 hours drying these tomatoes in the oven, we still need to run them through a vinegar bath to assure a longer shelf life. This also helps to move the excess salt that was on the tomatoes through that process. So to do that, I'm going to add 4 cups of water into a saucepan. And a half a cup of white distilled vinegar. We're going to bring this water to a boil, and then we are going to put the tomatoes into simmer for 5 minutes. Let's go to the stove. Here I've got a rolling boil, and I'm simply going to add the sun-dried tomatoes in there. I want to get them in there. Maybe I can get them. You want to make sure the brine's covering them completely. There, I was able to get them all in, so I'm just going to push this down. Yeah, they're all covered in the brine, which is perfect. Now what I'm going to do is set the timer for 5 minutes. For this next step, we are going to put the tomatoes back in the oven to surface dry. You don't have to do this. You can do a 2-hour wait time on the counter. You could simply lay them out and let them dry naturally over a 2-hour period of time or longer, but I'm always impatient. So I have found that this step works better. Simply to lay them out. Here you can see I laid the tomatoes out on a single layer. I'm going to put these in the oven to surface dry the rest of this moisture off, and it's going to take anywhere from 30 minutes to 1 hour. I like to sterilize my jars in the dishwasher, and these ones just came out. Now what we're going to do is pack some tomatoes and some herbs in the jar, and we're going to cover the whole thing with olive oil. Olive oil acts as a seal to keep the air away. I'm also going to use a hot water bath, even though I shouldn't have to. I've had these sealed up in the cupboard for well over a year, and they still taste wonderful, and there has not been any spoilage because the olive oil does its job. To start, I'm going to add a little minced garlic to the bottom of the jar, and I diced up 1 clove of garlic per jar, so I have 6 jars, so there's 6 cloves of garlic total, because we're going to layer this up. The other thing that I have is oregano. This is my own oregano from my garden that I have dried. Oh, it smells wonderful. You can add any type of spice that you would like to this. Some people add regular Italian seasoning, which is more of a mix. You can add basil, you can add peppercorns, you can add whatever you like. For this batch, I'm just going to simply use my oregano and some fresh garlic. So I'm going to put about half a teaspoon in the bottom of each of these jars. And now the fun part begins, where we layer these tomatoes in. So I'm going to fill it about halfway with these tomatoes. And you want to get it layered in there and push down. The goal is to have them packed in with the air out. So I'll finish packing these up. This is really a fun project. If you have kids, this is something that they may enjoy as well. Now that I have them filled halfway, I'm going to add the next layer of herbs. So a few herbs. It's kind of sticky because it's fresh garlic. It's really nice when you have your own herbs because you can afford to add extra herbs to things, which is really fun. Now I'm going to put the final layer of tomatoes in. And if you use taller jars, you can do it in 3 layers as well. I really like these wide mouth, shorter jars. Again, these are half pint, approximately 1 cup. When you get down to the end, you want to make sure you have some equal distribution of the tomatoes. There, I've used up all of the tomatoes. Now you can add additional herbs on the top if you want, but I find that they float and I don't want them touching the lid, so I'm not going to do that. So now that I have my tomatoes and herbs all packed in the jars, we're going to do a pour over with some olive oil. I use extra virgin olive oil. You can use whatever you would like. I'm going to pour it in slowly because we want to make sure the air has time to escape. So I'm going to put an initial pour in an initial bunch of oil, and then we're going to give it a few minutes and let that oil settle because the air will come up. You want to leave a little headspace at the top too because you really want these jars to seal. I've made so many sun-dried tomatoes already, I've ran out of olive oil twice. Had to get a bigger jar. You also can take a spoon and go around the edge and make sure that that air has a chance to come up. I think this helps quite a bit. Again, to try to make sure that the air has a chance to get out of there. Air is the culprit when it comes to canning. You don't want that air in there. You want everything to be really well sealed. If you have too much oil in and you don't have enough headspace room, like this one I've got way too much oil in there, I'm going to simply take some of the oil out and I'm going to move it to a jar that doesn't have enough. Just rearrange the oil a little bit. And you want to make sure the tomatoes are completely covered with oil. I almost always get a little bit of oil on this top lid in the ring where I need the seal to be, and I cannot have that. Water will not wash the oil away, so what I use is a little white vinegar on a napkin, and I very carefully go around and make sure I get all of that oil off that top seal area. So now that I've got the tops of the jars all oil free, I'm going to apply the lids. And I boiled these lids for at least 1 minute on the stove to loosen the rubber so that they will seal. It's one of the little tricks that I found that works really good. When you apply the rings, you only want to put them on finger tight. You don't want to crank them down because you want to give room for the air to escape. We're going to put them in a water bath because I'm going to do long-term shelf life with these, and I want to make sure everything is going to last as long as possible. Now that I have these ready, we're going to put these in a water bath. Let's go to the stove. Okay, we're back over at the stove and I have my brand new canner that I got for doing water bath, which I absolutely love. It's kind of a fun color too. It's nice and blue. Inside I have my jars and I have a gripper. I'm going to simply put them in this water bath. It's nice to be able to do them all at the same time. Once I have them setting on the rack, then I can simply lower the jars down into the basket. You can see they're all submerged in the water. You want the lids completely underwater. That helps to create a pressure system to allow the excess oxygen or air to get out of the jars. Now I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. Welcome back. I've just taken the jars out of the hot water bath, and I will have to wait for an hour or more, and then the jars will seal. When the jar seals, it sucks down and there is a distinctive pop, which is always reassuring since you can see how labor intensive this process is. I don't usually eat the sun-dried tomatoes plain, but you can put them on garlic bread or eat them with crackers. But what I like to make with the sun-dried tomatoes is Tuscan chicken. So leave me a comment below if you'd like to see me make Tuscan chicken using my sun-dried tomatoes. Last but not least, don't forget to label your jars. It could be a real pain not knowing when they were made. So I will let these stay in my pantry for up to a year. They typically don't last that long. I usually will eat them well before 1 year is expired. And this year I planted extra tomatoes just to make sure I could make more of these oven-dried, aka sun-dried tomatoes. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up so YouTube knows to share this content with others. Also, check out my Garden to Table playlist in the description below. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.